In a world where change is the only constant, Choumil stands at the forefront, guiding title professionals to not just grow their businesses, but to master the art of innovation. With every episode, you're handed the keys to unlock unparalleled growth and stay ahead of the curve. Get ready for a transformative journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Title Agents Podcast, where we bring you insights from the top minds in real estate. I am your host, Choumil, CEO of Alltech National Title. Today, we're thrilled to chat with industry leader, best-selling author, Pat Hiban. Get ready for tips and innovation, growth, and navigating the ever-changing markets of real estate. Let's dive in. Welcome, Pat.
What's up, Mo? How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm feeling better having you as a guest. You're a dear friend and a mentor, so I'm really excited to have you to add value to our tele audience.
Good to be here.
Let's start off. How about a little background on you? How did you get started in real estate? Where did you grow up and all that fun stuff?
So I grew up in Maryland, in Columbia, Maryland, which is a suburb of Baltimore, right between Washington and D.C. and Baltimore. And grew up with a family of 5 kids. My mom was a special ed teacher at a high school. My dad was in property management of condominiums. Went to a kind of a local college, a Frostburg State College, about 4,000 students. Met my wife there. I got a degree in sociology, simply because I had to get out on time because, there was no free lunch. I couldn't do a 5-year plan, so I did the shortest major, which was sociology, and then was going to be a probation officer, but that didn't work out. And I ended up getting my real estate license. I was 21 years old because I'm an October baby. So got my license at 21 and then just started selling real estate. And then I basically was in the game of real estate sales for 30 plus years. Well, probably 25, I guess. It's always a blur kind of when I got out. Because, agents, they keep their license and still do deals here and there or get referrals and stuff. But nonetheless, let's say 25 years. And in the process, had my own company at one point called the Pat Hiban Real Estate Group, had a mortgage company and a title company. And then the market crashed. And basically, I kind of figured that was a good time for me to get out, was after the market crashed, and I had to downsize. We went from a manic time where every dime you spent made you a quarter, no matter what. And so it made it really fun for a guy like me who's very creative to create marketing and create television commercials and all kinds of things to try to get business, and then it would actually work, to, nothing working and spending money trying to pump things up so that they work and they still don't work. So I got out of the business around 2000. Mentally I was out, or probably 2009. I got out, through a partnership agreement with my number one agent, Mike Sloan, around 2010, 2011. Floundered for a while, trying different things. I probably tried like 10 different ideas over the next 5 years of how I'm going to scratch the itch to feel productive and make money and kind of get back on top of the mountain. Out of those 10, 2 worked. One is GoBundance, which you were one of the original members of, one of the OGs. And the other is DAPT Acquisitions, which is our apartment complex company where we buy multifamily apartments. Yeah, and that's it. I live in Folly Beach, South Carolina, and I have two daughters who are in their late 20s.
That's awesome. During your early days in real estate, what were some of the toughest challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think the toughest challenges were, my personal toughest challenge was I looked very young. Number one, I was 21, but I looked 19 or probably 18. I always looked younger than I was. And I overcame that by, wearing a suit every day, just basically dressed up. I would dress up with no appointments. I was that guy. I would go to the office every morning in a suit without an appointment.
Looking the parts.
And just looking the part because I felt, hey, just in case, in case I got a call. And a lot of times that did happen. I did get a call. And I think people do take you more seriously if you're young and you're dressed up and it just shows you're making an effort, that you're serious. It shows you're serious, and so that was my first challenge. And I think the second challenge I had was just lack of training. There wasn't a lot of training back then. It was basically you show up, you do what they call floor duty, which is you play secretary so they don't have to pay for a secretary. And you take messages for all the other agents. You write down the messages. Oh, this person called. This person called. There was no voicemail. And then you would hope that through you taking 20 messages, someone would call and say, how much is that house? And there was no ownership of, oh, that's my lead. It was the company's lead. So you'd look it up in the book or whatever and say, oh, that one's, $95,000. And then you try to talk that person into looking at it with you, and so that was the game, and there was no training for that. It was just kind of sit there and do that, and it took me a couple of years before I found the training and the proper mindset. But once I learned it, I felt like the world completely changed as far as my ability to succeed.
Was there a specific moment when you realized you had found the key to scaling your real estate business?
Yes. It was my third year. My first year, I made $13,000. My second year, I made $24,000, which at the time was both of those years were not good. My wife was making more than me. We were both 23 at that time or so. We weren't married, but, the point is I was making not much. And then my third year I made 87. And the reason that I made 87 from 24 was because I started focusing on listings rather than buyers. And I had to take a course. I took Floyd Wickman's Sweat Hogs course. He was the father of Gino Wickman, who is a lot of people know him from EOS, Entrepreneurial Operation Systems. But he was brilliant, and he basically said listings are the name of the game. You need to only focus on listings. If you get a buyer, it's a byproduct of a listing. Don't make that your goal is to get a buyer. So, and I had never thought that or known that. And most of my business was buyers, probably 80-90%. And so I said, okay. And then he said, here's how you do it. You show up, you pick up the phone, and you start calling streets and asking if they want to sell, which seems so elementary. But back then it wasn't. It was, but it was hard, right? Nobody wanted to do it. Agents tend to be lazy. There's a lot of part-time agents. There's not a lot of focused agents. And I was focused. This is my career, so I actually did it. Many times I was the only agent in the office. I was the first one to get there, the last one to leave out of like a 5,000 square foot office. And I just called. Called, and lo and behold, the funny thing was it worked. And then people started listing their house with me just because I was that young kid. They kept calling them and kept checking, and they figured if this guy is serious enough to call me for a year and check on me, am I ready yet? Then he's going to follow up when it comes time to list. So that's how it happened. And I began to list houses, and it was off to the races from there. Then I just became a listing agent from there. And that's how it all changed. That's how I almost quadrupled my income, is just because listings and the price ranges went up. And then I just started calling higher end neighborhoods, and it just made logical sense to me that I could have 10 listings, but only 2 buyers at a time. Right. So it was just smarter business. So that's how it happened.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is persistence.
Persistence and focus, like knowing what to do. You can be persistent at hitting the wrong nail. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of how a lot of agents end up. And that's how I would have ended up. Literally, if I did not take that course, I could have easily not taken that course and it would just been a buyer agent. It would have been terrible, because back then, like, the job flexibility wasn't there either. Like, people, like, if I said to somebody, hey, can you go look at this house on Tuesday at 11, it would be no. They couldn't get off of work. People couldn't. They commuted to work, they commuted home. So they generally saw houses between like 7 and 9 at night, or the weekends. And so during Monday through Friday, you didn't really show houses or list houses. It's a lot different now. People have a lot more flexibility than they did in the 80s and 90s. It just felt, at least that's kind of how I saw it. I don't know about you.
Yeah. So after building a large team, what did you find to be the biggest difference between being a top performing sales agent and managing a successful real estate team?
For me, it was fun. It was just a lot funner. Like I enjoyed the hunting and gathering of going out and listing, and then securing, conquering, say, the listing, walking away. I would have all my paperwork in a briefcase or whatever, and you'd spend 3 hours in the people's house, and you'd walk away with a signed contract for a commission and the listing, and it just felt so great. And I really enjoyed that part of it, the gamemanship of it all, and the ego of it all, I guess, coming back and putting your name on the board. Who is this young kid that listed 5 houses this month, But to answer your question, what I found is, as I started building a team, I had a lot more fun, showing up, motivating people, training people, mentoring people, encouraging people, coming up with creative ideas on how to get more leads for those people, watching the numbers grow. All that stuff to me was a lot funner. I started getting bored, and my job, I did it a long time, right? So, I started at 21. I was probably 31 by the time I got my first team person. So I was getting bored of, dealing with people's emotions and dealing with the ups and downs of the business. So the timing was really good for me. So yeah.
What risks have you taken throughout your career that paid off? And what risk in hindsight would you have taken or approached differently?
Oh, well,
the entrepreneur, the serial entrepreneur that you are.
Yeah. So I think Yeah, that's a great question. Like, well, in the business, right? In the business, the two biggest risks I took were one, um, starting a team, right? Hiring other people and getting rid of my uh, false belief that I it had to be me, right? And that was a big risk. And also, the industries now is like there's teams everywhere, but you gotta understand that, when I was launching a team, not that I was the first one to do it, but that there was very few. 1% of the agents had teams. 99% didn't. So that was a big risk. Paying them money, paying salaries out of real estate commissions was kind of people that just kind of thought it was crazy. And so that was a big risk. The second big risk that paid off was advertising on television. I don't think I would have been able to grow my business like I did at the right time if it weren't for TV. I used to be a telemarketing because I was taught by Floyd Wickman to telemarket myself. I began to hire telemarketers. I think at one point I had like 5 telemarketers to just work banging out the phones at night, calling people saying, do you want to sell your house? And I met a guy who did television commercials. It was a real estate agent in Arizona named Russell Shaw. And he was killing it. And I was like, holy dirt, if he could do this, I could do this. So, and I said, what a concept, right? Like, instead of paying 5 people to pick up the phone and call all these houses, all I got to do is shoot a 30-second commercial, and this message goes right into their living room, just like a phone call, right? And I can do 200 in a night, and it's like 200 telemarketers calling houses. You know what I mean? Like, it just made logical sense to me. So I did it, and the funny thing, our budget for the first month was $2,000 we were going to spend, and the commercial came out on like a Tuesday night, and we got a call on the next morning, Wednesday morning, about somebody that saw the commercial. And so we just kept upping the, 2,000, the 3,000, the 5,000, the 10,000, the 20,000, the 30,000. Like it was such a fun time to do something like that worked. And it was a risk because it was a pain. The editing process was different back then too. You had to shoot a 30-second commercial nonstop. You couldn't stop and start and stop and start. You had to say all your words in 30 seconds.
Perfectly.
Yeah. And it took literally 12. The first commercial I shot took 12 hours. It was brutal, man. It was brutal. So hard. Just in a suit and doing the same movements over. Anyways, those are the two biggest risks. Entrepreneurial wise, after that, really interesting when I think about it. I think I think I would say trusting partners, because up until then I had never had partners. It was always me, right? Like I didn't really think about partnership. But I kind of realized a little bit that at least in investing in real estate, like it's easy to invest in onesie twosie houses and rent them out. But if I really wanted to get into apartments and commercial buildings and things like that, I needed to do it with partners. So that took me to that next step, that monopoly step of trading your little green houses for red hotels. I needed partners to do that. So that was a risk that I took, was going with partners. Luckily, with David Osborne and Tim Rode and Mike McCarthy, the partners that I chose with GoBundance worked out to be, a great partnership, just because we've been good. For those that don't know, GoBundance is a mastermind of business people and entrepreneurs who come together and share ideas. Mo can tell you a lot more about it from his point of view. But what we found is David and Tim and Mike and I were very, very different individuals. And sometimes when you mix differences, it into say a soup. It makes the soup taste really good. And there were other masterminds that actually started or were already in business at the same time. And we look back 11 years backwards, and those masterminds are still at the same numbers or less of what they were then. And we've, 10x'd our number of members. And I would say that the reason is because their soup just kind of tastes like the only thing in it is carrots. Where we have a soup with peas and carrots and meat and, salt and butter and everything else. So it's very, I'm getting back to answer your question. It was the taking the risk to partner with people, even though, we were dynamically, different in personality.
As you know, running a successful business or a team can be exhausting. How have you managed stress and avoided burnout throughout your career?
Well, again, that's a great question. Really good questions here, because they're making me think. I mean, I have answers, but I've certainly I would say, looking back over my, I'm 58 now. So, right. So I started when I was 21, just crazy. So almost 50. Well, that's 40, let's say 40 years of working. The most stressed was right around between 5 years in the business and 10 years. For me, I started in 1988 kind of. So I would say 93 to 99 or something, because I was doing everything, no team, just me. I was busy. I mean, I was doing 3 to 5 deals a month, right? I was starting to become a really solid agent by myself without a team. And I took everything and inherited everything, right? It had been like a doctor who answered the phone, dealt with the insurance, did the surgery, was the nurse, cleaned the office, cleaned the toilets, did the accounting. I mean, that person would be stressed, right? And that's what a real estate agent is without a team. You got to do everything, everything. And then when the deal fell apart, you had so much more to lose because you worked so much harder for it. I can't explain it to you other than you could have a couple of 100 hours of work in a deal and it fall apart and you got paid nothing. And so the stress was overwhelming. And that was the thing. They could fire you at any time, right? That was their right according to your contract. And
this is Pat, this is something our audience is title agents. And this is a good thing for our title audience to understand, that realtor that's so emotionally and financially invested in that transaction when it doesn't fall apart. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's why real estate agents are so in our butt and put a lot of stress on our teams, and that's for.
Yeah. So that's, you deal with that on the title end of it as well. If it falls apart, you don't make any money, right? You don't, you're not getting paid. And there's a risk reward to those types of businesses. There has to be, because otherwise you would quit, because of the stress. You'd be if I'm only making, as much as a social worker is going to make or a probation officer is going to make, which is what I wanted to be, for all this stress, I'll just quit and do that and, have a paid holidays and everything else. So that was the deal with that. So it was tough. And so there were times, actually, I remember a time specifically where I was sitting in my driveway and I had just lost two listings that I had listed, and two deals fell apart. It was the same lady. It was the same lady who listed two houses with me. And then she fired me. And I was sitting in my driveway and getting ready to go inside. And I was like, I quit. I had made up my mind in that moment to become a lawyer. Like, I said, I'm going to go to law school. I got some money saved up. I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to become a lawyer because this is BS. I don't need this. And, of course, the next day I woke up and I was fine. I was like, screw her, on with the next, and it felt a lot better. The sun came out. But that was a stressful time. I still have memories of being on vacation, trying to go be on vacation and worrying about deals. When my first daughter was born, I actually I'm embarrassed to say this, but on the way to the hospital, after my wife's water had broken, I swung by the office with her in the car to send a fax. Just because I knew I was going to be out for like 24 hours or so or more with the baby and her and or however long it took for the baby to come out and me to be there. But that's the type of stress it was. Like, it was just all consuming and I did not like that. And that I would say that would be the most stressful time. And then after that, after I hired a team and figured things out with a team, I became less and less stressed because other people were taking on that stress. And then as I got more and more competent people that I trusted, that stress went less and less. And then after real estate, as I began to hang around, business people that had more business than me, like David Osborne and Mike McCarthy and such, that they, their go-to was basically to find incredible people and let them run and not worry about it, not worry about it at all, but have metrics for them to check into and goals and aspirations, but really don't micromanage at all. When you don't micromanage at all, there's like no stress, providing you're making a profit, right? And then I kind of learned that. So going back to your question, it was a gradual thing over time. In the beginning, it was massively stressful, and then over time, it's less. Now I have a very stress-free life now. Like, I was doing our one sheet with Aaron West and Jim Shields, who and a one sheet is where it's like a baseball card where you flip the baseball card over the back and you have statistics. And I was doing my one sheet the other day, and Aaron West said to me, "You don't have any goals that are difficult. Like, you don't have any goals that are..."
You're ghosting.
Yeah, and then to me that meant stressful. And I said, yeah, I mean, I don't want any difficult goals. I don't, yeah, it's like, why would I want to add stress? Like, I mean, so it doesn't make sense now. But at the time, I wanted to add stress because stress equaled more money in my head, right? Well, that was the only way I knew how. It took 40 years to figure it out.
Good. Well, that's how you grow too. Like, when there's like a diamond, diamond gets refined through pressure, and that's how you get better and get stronger. And that's also like the saying in your genius zone, and our good friend Fred Gross, as he said, like the stay in your lane, stay in your high dollar producing activity, and let everybody else do what they're great at. Like, you're happy, they're happy, everybody's doing what they're good at and they enjoy to do.
Right.
The power of leverage.
Yeah, and you have to know what you're supposed to do. And generally, you're supposed to do, like you said, dollar productive activities, things that make you money or don't do anything at all. Like, or let, yeah. So anyways,
Well, let's shift gears here. And you're a best-selling author. Your book, Six Steps to Seven Figures, is a wealth building guide. Can you share one or two principles from the book that listeners, our title professionals, can start implementing today to help them build wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically in the book, I set out to write the book and I made it like an autobiography kind of my life in the real estate game from say 21 to 46, let's say, years of age, and all the steps that I had taken. And then the publisher took it and they were like, you need to cut it in half. It was 400 pages. So I cut it in half, and then they said, well, don't make it a chronological thing. I want you to figure out how to do it so it's more teachable than a story lesson. So then that's how we came up with 6 steps. There were 6 specific steps, which, the 5th step is my favorite, which is build. I think I have a lot of fun building. And by building, I mean like build on a success up, not a ground up. That's something a mentor of mine once told me. He said, build on a success up, not a ground up. And what that meant is, if you're a real estate agent and you sell a house to a doctor or a police officer, and I actually did this, I did it with the police, Howard County Police. I sold a house. Coincidentally, a guy called and I met him and sold him the house, and he happened to be a cop. And we hit it off, and I just was like, well, can you, who else, just like I always do, try to hit him up for referrals. He referred me to another cop. And every cop that I got from that point on, I would just name names. And they were a tight-knit community. They like know each other. And once you work with one cop, then you're kind of like like they trust you. Like you got good credit. You know what I mean? You're not... And they check you out too. I'm sure they look. He even told me, the guy Daryl, his name was Daryl, the first guy. He told me he did a background check on me before he even started working with me.
Big brother.
Exactly, yeah. And so he told the other cops, and next thing you know, it was I probably sold 10 plus cops houses. But every cop that I sold, I was like, oh yeah, I sold a house to Daryl Thompson. I sold a house to Gary Gardner. I sold a house to this guy, and eventually I sold a house to the chief, that was huge. I was like, oh, I sold chief a house, and I was building on success up, and I did that with everything. I don't care even if it was like a teacher, and I only sold one teacher a house like 7 years prior. I would make sure I knew everything about that teacher from memory or whatever. When I saw that teacher, I would say, oh, do you know her? Oh yeah, I know her, and then as an agent, agents love to talk about the awards and the titles that they get, and there's a reason, because it actually works, right? You're building on a success. I was Agent of the Month, February 1997, but you want to tell them, even if it's like 2004 by then. Yeah. But you're just building on a success up, and it worked real well. And of the 6, I say that's my favorite. Probably the second one, which is track. There's an old saying, I think Jim Rohn says, that which is tracked expands. I think that's true in the title business. I think it's true in the real estate sales or any business, really. You have to track everything. You should be tracking the number of calls you're doing, the number of people, the profit, massive tracking cannot hurt. And so it just makes it grow. The more you track it, the more you pay attention, especially if you have a team and they know you're tracking. They become highly accountable once they know you're tracking. So the whole chapter talks about how I track things over time and how I had fun with tracking. You can have games with your your staff, with tracking. One of the things we're doing at GoBundance now is we're putting regional leaders. I think we have 7 regional leaders of different regions throughout the U.S. But you can believe it, that we're going to track each of those 7 and compare them to each other. And like your friend John Edwin, who thinks he's going to track number 1 out of 7, is going to find out awful fast that he may be tracking 3 or 4 in any given month, and I'm going to give him hell about that. And he's going to be like, damn, I didn't know Hiban's tracking, right? Like, tracking works for everybody, all around. So I would say those are my 2 favorites. Yeah.
Awesome. Now you had a very successful podcast. It's called Real Estate Rockstars.
Mm-hmm.
After interviewing hundreds of top real estate professionals and teams, what are some of the most memorable lessons or insights you've taken away? I want to make you think.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I remember, I don't know why, but it must be because this is two things come to mind, and both were very young agents, and I don't have the names. I apologize. But I remember talking to one young agent who, was fresh out of like high school. He was a telemarketer for a weight loss program or whatever. And the day he got his license, he left his job, didn't give 2 weeks notice, didn't have business cards, and went to the real estate office and just started calling people and say, hey, I've got my license. Can I be your agent? I mean, just so simple. Just started talking to everybody he knows, texted all of his friends. I have my real estate license. Can I be your agent? And he was very successful at such a young age. And the moral of that story was like, he just did the simplest thing, but he did the most important thing, which was just ask for the order, right? Nothing else matters. They were like, oh, do you need a desk? Do you want to do this? Do you want to come up with I don't know, planning? Do you want a couple of days to plan? They were you got to go through 6 months of training and all this stuff. And he was like, I don't want any of that. I just want to let people know I have a license. He was taking pictures of it and texting people, look, I got a license. He didn't have a college degree, and I don't even know if he graduated high school. So he was just so excited to get a license. And he was just proud of that license. The next one is, I remember a young couple that I met, and I believe there was they got out of the military. They were both in the military, and they both got out of the military, and they realized that the majority of their competition just wanted to email and text. And they said, no, we're going to take it to another level. We're going to go together as a couple to the house. Anytime someone wanted to talk to us, we'd be like, well, are you home now? Or when will you be home? And they would always go in person, even if it was a 5-minute conversation on their front step. And then when they listed a house, they would stop by constantly, right? Like the opposite of texting and calling. They would be there for the home inspection. They would be there for every other agent that showed the house. One spouse or the other would make it over there and accommodate all showings. And they, the average listing that they took, they might have been there 30 times to the house. And they were able to charge full commission and get incredible reviews just because they were like always in the face of the consumer and all the other agents in their competition, mind you, who had been in the business 20 years. And by the way, this was like in a high-end area. Like these are houses like $1 million, $2 million. So like, the agents that have been in business 20, 30 years that thought they owned this market of these high-end houses had no idea what was going on, that there was these two young kids that were former military that gave such phenomenal face-to-face service for the same price. And it just made all the other agents in their market, especially one agent who was like the queen. They call her the queen, and their goal was to take down the queen. She lost it because she lost a couple listings to them, and she couldn't understand why. And she was just old school, and they were just, their own school. I don't even call them new school. That was it. They were just in there, didn't want to do phones and texts, didn't want to do emails. So anyways, those two come out to mind as what your people can learn, I think, that were phenomenal interviews.
Now we're going to talk about mentorship. Who were your most influential mentors, and what lasting advice did they give you that shaped your career or life?
Well, so the first mentor I ever had was a guy named Irv Norgren. When I got into real estate, I was 21. People don't believe this, but it was a women's game, and it was 1987. 90% of the real estate agents were women. It just was. The office I was in, it was a company called Grempler Realty. There was 41 agents. There was one man. It just so happened that I was able to sit next to him. Or maybe it was me doing it or whatever, but I was able to sit next to him, and he taught me a ton because, the first thing I remember calling, like I sat in open house and I was following up with the buyers of the open house, and I said some things, and he said to me, try saying this. And literally the next call I said it, and he was like, wow. And then like 2 weeks had passed, and he got on the phone and he was talking to somebody. Then he hung up. Then I called someone and got on the phone and basically emulated his whole conversation, just repeated what he said. And I hung up, and he goes, well, it's starting to echo in here. And I was like, well, you know more than I do. And so, but he really liked that. It actually encouraged him. The fact that I was copying him and actually listened to him, it really inspired him to like help me more. And then he started giving me leads, and he'd be like, look, I can't handle this. This guy called me today. I don't got time to call him back. Can you call him? And he started just hooking me up. And just because he knew that I would follow up. And so he was my first mentor. And then I think Floyd Wickman was a catalyst too, because Floyd, basically taught me that I needed to be a listing agent rather than a buyer agent. And then Howard Brenton was a big mentor of me. I think Howard taught me team building. And that was a catalyst. And then I would say Russell Shaw was the guy that taught me how to do TV commercials. So those were probably the levels that of every mentor that I had that really paid off.
What projects or goal you're working on now that you're most excited about?
Wow. So I'm from Maryland. Both of my daughters moved south to Charlotte, North Carolina. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, which is about 4 hours from there. And as a good mother and father should, I believe, or at least try to, you want to be near your kids. Hopefully we'll get some marriages, engagements, and some grandkids and things like that in the future. So, it's our goal to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. And that's I think a big life goal that I have, to be, bicycle distance to my kids and to some grandkids, hopefully. And, that's all hope. There's a lot of hope. I'm in that kind of post-college graduation, pre-marriage stage with my kids. So you're kind of in this floating phase where you're like, okay, well, we can, we have a lot of free time and we spend a lot of time together as a husband and wife, but at the same time, and I like to move things along. So, that would be my biggest goal now is to start spending a lot more time in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is going to be a whole new city for me. I've only been there a couple of times, but it's going to be a whole new experience. And I kind of like experiencing new cities and meeting new people and things.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite quote?
I have a lot of favorite quotes. One of my quotes that comes to mind is there's one of my favorite books is As a Man Thinketh. And, one of the things James Allen says in As a Man Thinketh is the calm, serene man is always loved and revered. And I think to that a lot because, there's so much toxicity and fighting and, BS on Twitter and stuff like this and news and politics and all this stuff these days. And, at the end of the day, the people that we actually look towards are the guy that's kind of sitting there at peace, that old man that's sitting there at peace and just like, well, we'll see, maybe, maybe not. It could be, you could be right, but you could be wrong. You know what I mean? I've always been attracted to that. And, so I always remember that from James Allen is the calm, serene man is always loved and revered. That's the one that comes to mind today.
That's awesome. Do you have any last words for our audience?
Words
of wisdom.
Go ahead. Words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom.
Yeah, I'm trying to. What can I say? It wouldn't be a cliche. I would say you don't know. I guess the one thing I've learned over 40 some years of business and doing different things is you really don't know how to do it, but somebody else does, or can at least lead you in that direction. And it's important to follow directions and sit in the corner and do what you're told. If somebody has a track record of whatever it is, title, mortgage, real estate, go with the person who has a track record and emulate them and do exactly like they did. Not exactly, but put your own spin on it, put your own personality, your own style on it. But they know more than you. And that's been true to me, whether it was real estate, DAPT acquisitions, apartments, GoBundance, any of my ventures, I've always tended to been wrong in the beginning, and needed people to bat me on the side one way or the other, whack me a couple of times until I figured out which is the right way to go. And you just don't know. I guess the key is just to keep moving forward. That's a cliche, but it's so true, right? Just keep moving forward and keep following the leaders in the field as to what's working for them, and it should work for you too.
Well, thank you so much. That's a wrap for today's episode with Pat Hiban. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to subscribe for more expert insights. Keep innovating, stay ahead, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Title Agents Podcast. Thank you, Pat.
Mo, it's been fun. Great questions.
In a world where change is the only constant, Choumil stands at the forefront, guiding title professionals to not just grow their businesses, but to master the art of innovation. With every episode, you're handed the keys to unlock unparalleled growth and stay ahead of the curve. Get ready for a transformative journey